Welcome back to the video, and in today's video, we're ranking every single NFL wide receiver 2 from worst to best. If you haven't seen the video yesterday, I ranked every single wide receiver number 1. That video did great. I really appreciate it. If you haven't gotten to see that, go watch it. And before you watch this video, go watch it and then come back and watch the wide receiver 2 so you can kind of get an idea of the concept. Pretty much, I'm going to be ranking them in order from worst to best based on how good they are as number 2s and honestly how much talent they have overall. So pretty much that's the whole standard from worst to best. I've done it with the quarterbacks. I've done it with the running backs. I've done it with the wide receiver 1s. I've done it with the tight ends. Now we are on to wide receiver number 2s. Before we get into the video, please sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel because we're on the road to 600 and you guys can join the journey. And also comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of my takes. I had some hot takes in the wide receiver number 1s. We'll see how many we have in the wide receiver number 2s. So at number 31, I have Chris Moore of the new Tennessee Titans. Not the new, but like he's a new player on that team. He's just not that good. I guess he was a slot wide receiver for the Texans, or he was decent. He got some playing time for the Texans, but he's not a good wide receiver. He's just a platoon, a backup wide receiver, a guy that's like a fourth option. He really just shouldn't be a wide receiver number 2, and that's why he's this low. Next up, at number 31, I'm taking another newly acquired player, Mack Hollins of the new Atlanta Falcons. I don't mind Mack Hollins. He's actually a decent wide receiver, but again, he's probably more of a wide receiver 3 or number 4. He had some good plays for the Raiders this season, last season, but he's not that good of a wide receiver. He's not definitely top end talent or anything like that. He can get you 400 yards and like 3 touchdowns, but he's not a wide receiver number 2 level, and that's where you're gonna see these 24 to 32 category is a lot of those receivers that just aren't quite wide receiver number 2s. Next up at number 30, I'm putting John Mechie of the Houston Texans. He had a decent year last year for the Houston Texans. I think that was his rookie year. Not bad. It was right behind Brandon Cooks. He was okay. He was solid. But again, he didn't really wow me. And again, he just isn't a wide receiver number 2 in my opinion. I think he's more of a 3 or a 4. Again, with the talent that the Houston has, that's why he's playing so many minutes. And maybe he will really improve this year. He could. But right now, at this very, very moment, he's going to be ranked down as the number 30 wide receiver number 2 in the NFL. Next up, at number 29, I'm putting Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore now is going to be the wide receiver number 2 because DeAndre Hopkins left. Marquise Brown will be the wide receiver number 1. Here, the number 2. I actually like Rondale Moore a lot. I actually like the way that he plays. The problem is he gets injured a lot, and he's never on the field. He's never consistent. It's like he'll go off one game, and then he'll have like one rec for 10 yards in the next. So, consistency-wise, he's going to be this low on this list, but I do think he's going to have a decent year this year as long as Kyler Murray will throw to him. Next up, at number 28, I'm putting Van Jefferson. Definitely a solid wide receiver. I just think he's more of a wide receiver number 3 in my opinion. But he's been pretty good for the Rams throughout his time there. Obviously now he's going to be the wide receiver number 2 because of both OBJ and Allen Robinson leaving. He's going to get a lot more time. So maybe he'll show up higher on this list going into next year because I do think he's going to get more playing time. But with how the Rams are going to be this year, I don't see him being that insane. And that's why he falls at number 28 on this list. Next up at number 27, I'm taking New England Patriot Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne might be one of the more underrated wide receiver number 2s, or wide receivers in general in the game of football. He is tall, he can go up and catch balls, and I feel like just because he's on New England means that he just isn't as good. But realistically, he's still a really, really solid wide receiver, and I expect him to get a lot of touchdowns, which he did a lot of last year, and also just improve as a wide receiver. And Mac Jones does have chemistry with him. He likes to throw to him a lot. But again, he's just not a wide receiver number 2. He's more a 3 or a 4 kind of guy. Next up, at number 25, I'm going to be taking Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Marquez is not bad. He's just not a wide receiver number 2. Maybe he is, but the Chiefs also don't have a great wide receiver core in the first place. I mean, number 1 is Kadarius Toney. So, I mean, I expect Marquez to have a good year because he has Patrick Mahomes throwing to him. But as a wide receiver itself, he doesn't have a lot of talent. All he does is he's big. He can run deep routes, but that's about it. He doesn't really have a lot of versatility. And at number 24, I'm going to be taking Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts. I actually do like Alec Pierce he was really good in his rookie year. for the Indianapolis Colts. He was more wide receiver number 3, but now that Paris Campbell has left, he's really transitioned to that wide receiver number 2 behind Michael Pittman. I think he's going to have a decent year again. He's a solid big wide receiver that can catch, and I hope that Anthony Richardson can target him a good amount and make him higher up on this list. But for now, again, based on how last year he played, he's more wide receiver 3 in my opinion. Not quite in that upper echelon yet. Maybe he can have a really good year though and improve, and maybe he'll be up there next year. Next up at number 23 is going to be the rookie Caleb Addison, the only actual rookie on this list. I really like Caleb Addison, first round talent going to the Vikings. And I think behind Jefferson, he's going to do great. Obviously, with Adam Thielen leaving, KJ Osborne will stay the slot wide receiver, and he'll probably be the number 2. I like him. I think he's a good wide receiver. I didn't really get to watch him play in college because I don't really watch college football, but I can see the potential that this guy has. Just a fast guy, and I think behind Jefferson he's going to learn a lot. I think he's going to have a decent year. Next up at number 22, I'm going to be putting. This is a close one, but I'm going to be putting Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson is not that bad. I think he's actually a very solid wide receiver. But the thing is, just like the Chiefs score, the wow, I totally forgot about Marcos Valdes-Scantling in the list. I just realized that. My bad, guys. Yeah, I don't mind Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's a solid big wide receiver. He was decent last year for the Giants. He wasn't insane, but he was solid, and I expect him to improve. Obviously, the Giants' wide receiver core isn't that good, but he's a big guy. He kind of reminds me of like Kenny Golladay, and Kenny Golladay sucks, but I think he's going to be a better Kenny Golladay, hopefully, for the New York Giants. I think he's a solid wide receiver, though. I mean, again, all these guys are decent. It's just they're not wide receiver number 2s, and Wan'Dale just isn't a wide receiver number 2, in my opinion. But I think he's a solid wide receiver. Next up, at number 21, I'm going to be putting... This is also kind of tough, and I guess I go with... This is close. This is hard. Not easy. I'm going to go Donovan Peoples-Jones. I really like John Fitzgerald. Might be one of the more underrated wide receivers in the game of football. A deep threat, and seems to catch touchdowns every single play, and seems to always, when he catches the ball, get at least 20 yards down the field before he gets tackled. A fast, big guy. Kind of reminds me of like a worse DK Metcalf, and I think he's a super underrated wide receiver in the game. Might be the most underrated wide receiver in the game of football today. Next up, we have another Jones. It's Marvin Jones of the new Detroit Lions. Solid wide receiver, always been decent throughout his career, just been a solid wide receiver. Now, obviously, he's not in Jacksonville anymore. I think in Detroit he's going to do better. I think Jared Goff's going to light him up a bit more, and I actually really like the idea. Marvin Jones is definitely a solid wide receiver. Has always been a solid number 2 wide receiver. He's consistent, for sure. That's the one word to say. He is consistent. Next up, at number 16, I'm going to be putting Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman is decent. Rashad Bateman is solid, but Rashad Bateman is not one of the best in... What the heck just happened? I went from... Wow, I'm not... Guys, I'm out of it right now. I'm tired. If you guys didn't know, I'm really tired right now. And we are definitely not on 16 yet. At number 19, I'm putting DJ Chark. DJ Chark, solid wide receiver, good speed threat, can offer a lot of things to the Carolina Panthers, his new organization. I think Bryce Young could light him up, and I think he could be a really good target, a deep threat target behind Adam Thielen. And I think they're going to complement each other quite well, and I think Bryce and DJ Chark will definitely connect. Solid deep threat. Again, not much else there. He isn't that good, and he was kind of a bust in the draft, but he's a decent wide receiver, and that's kind of all you want for a wide receiver number 2. Is just a solid wide receiver that can catch the ball when you need him to. And DJ Chark brings that. Next up at number 18, I'm taking the newly acquired New York Jet, Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard's this high because I think Aaron Rodgers is going to use him a lot because he knows how to use him because they play together. Basically, they're the New York Packers at this point because they took everyone from Green Bay, took him over, so Aaron Rodgers would be happy. And I think Allen Lazard's going to be a good wide receiver for the Jets. Again, he's not the main guy. Obviously, Garrett Wilson is, but again, a big wide receiver that has a lot of speed for a guy his size, and I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver number 2 for the Jets this year. And next up, the last board in the 17 and 23 row, at number 17, I'm putting Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel is a speed demon, but he doesn't really add a ton of otherwise, amazing talent there. I think Jahan Dotson will become the wide receiver number 2 if he hasn't already. I'm putting him down as the wide receiver number 3, but he kind of is the wide receiver number 2 at this point. Curtis Samuel isn't bad. He's got speed, which helps him, and he's always consistent, getting like 800 yards. But he always gets injured, and he's never that insane. He's more just solid, and the injuries do scare me, so that's why I'm going to put him this low. And now we are going to the 11-16 because I said before, at number 16, I'm putting Rashad Bateman. Now we're back. Rashad Bateman's solid. I like Rashad Bateman a lot as a wide receiver. I think he's a very, very underrated wide receiver. The thing is again, just like Curtis Samuel, the injuries do scare me. I do like him a lot, but the injuries scare me. Hopefully Lamar Jackson can give him an opportunity behind OBJ, and I hope that he can stay healthy throughout an entire year because last year he was not on a bad pace to have a bad year at all, and it just got ruined by injuries. So hopefully Rashad Bateman goes back to his old form and can be a really good wide receiver again. That's the hope. Next up at number 15, I'm going to be taking Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is another really underrated wide receiver in the game. You could say he's the number 1, honestly, there, because I'm playing Jerry Jeudy because I think Jerry Jeudy is younger and that's who they want to be the number 1. But Courtland Sutton's a really, really good wide receiver, very underrated, can do a lot for a team. Again, this is one of those things where he doesn't get injured a ton, and he's super, super consistent. So I like him as an option as a solid number 2. He's gonna drop in at 15. He's ahead of Rashad because he's more consistent. He's ahead of Chris Samuel because he's more consistent. Simple as that. Next up at number 14, I'm putting the rookie last year, George Pickens. George Pickens had a really, really good year. Not only does he have hands like Justin Jefferson, but he also has a ton of speed, and he's a big wide receiver. Definitely an underrated receiver. I expect him to be number 1 in a few years once Diontae Johnson starts to cool off, which he kind of already has, but I still put Diontae as the number 1 because I still like him. But George Pickens is a really good wide receiver. Really, really good. Like I said, big, and he's got hands like Justin Jefferson. He can catch the ball really, really well, and he's got good route running. So at number, I think it's at 14. Yeah, number 14, George Pickens. And at number 13, I'm taking another newly acquired guy. It's the Dallas Cowboys, and it's Brandin Cooks. I think Brandin Cooks is probably one of the more underrated receivers. Again, we talk about consistency of Courtland Sutton. Brandin Cooks just has consistency even a little bit better. He's always been a great option, and honestly, not on a good team when he was in Houston, and he was still putting up great numbers. So I was seeing him on Dallas now with Dak as the quarterback. He should be able to have a really good year. Yes, he's getting up there in age, but I do like him as a wide receiver, and I think he's going to have a really solid year in Dallas. Very, very consistent. He's going to drop in at number 13. Next up, at number 12, I'm putting Michael Thomas. Might be a little bit high for a guy that really hasn't played in forever, and a guy that's always hurt, and a guy that's always complaining. But when we talk about talent, Michael Thomas is arguably the best in this list if he's gonna in his prime, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but he's never healthy and he always complains and he never looks like he actually wants to play anymore. So I really can't put him too high, but I will say the talent is gonna give him to 12, but I can't recommend any higher because he just is never he's never ready to play because he just complains a ton. But he's a great route runner. He can receive and he's great, but when he will show that, we don't even know. And to end off this list, just missing on the top 10 at number 11, I'm putting Jakobi Meyers, newly acquired Raider. I really like Jakobi Meyers. He had a really good year last couple of years with Mac Jones, and now he's going to get a chance with Jimmy G. I don't know how his stats are going to differ because you have Devontae, who's a top 3 wide receiver in the game. So how good is he actually going to do? It's a good question. I think he's going to do good though. I think he's a really good wide receiver. Speedy. Yes, he made some big mistakes last year, including a play against the Raiders. But I think we're talking about a guy that's going to give you consistent good, be a good consistent receiver. Can catch you for like 800 yards and like 6 touchdowns. That's Jakobi Meyers right there. He just missed out of the top 10 because there's a lot of good wide receiver number 2s actually in this game. Next up, at number 10, to start the top 10, I have Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney was the number 1 last year for the Chicago Bears, obviously losing it to DJ Moore now, and I really like Darnell Mooney. A speed demon, can catch the ball really well, and has really good route running. Justin Fields knows how to pass to him, and I expect him to keep using him, as well as they're trying to use DJ Moore, obviously, but I expect Justin Fields to still target Darnell a significant amount, and that's why I dropped him at number 10 because I think he's going to have a really good year. Next up, at number 9, I'm going to be taking Mike Williams. Mike Williams can be the top 5 if he wants to, but he, again, just similar to Michael Thomas, he always gets injured, and injuries have been a huge problem. I mean, he's played like 50% of the games that he's been that he's 50% of the season basically every single year. So it's a sad coincidence, but when he plays, he's amazing. but he just doesn't play all that much. So that's why I'm going to put him at 9. I'm going to put him safe, but we know he's got a top 5 peak for wide receiver number 2s. Next up at number 8, I'm taking Gabriel Davis. Gabriel Davis, he had not the greatest year last year for the Bills after a monster rookie year, but I still like Gabriel Davis. I think he's a really solid wide receiver, a guy that's clutch, a guy that can catch passes, a guy that has a good route runner, and a guy that can be clutch in touchdown situations. Obviously, we saw that in the playoffs. Um, he definitely had a down year, and that's why he's going to be ranking a little bit lower than usual at number 8. But, I mean, top 8 is still top 8. Gabriel Davis checks in at number 8, and he's still an amazing wide receiver. Next up at number 7, I'm putting Christian Kirk, another guy that is going to lose his spot to Calvin Ridley as a number 1. But Christian Kirk had still an unreal year last year. I thought at the start that the money that they gave Christian Kirk, Jacksonville gave Christian Kirk, was way too much. Now looking back on it, it looked like just the price, and maybe they even fleeced that money on him because he's a really, really good wide receiver, great route runner. He's not the smallest; he is the smallest maybe on the field, but he just knows how to get open, similar to a guy like Cooper Kupp. Just a small guy, but knows how to think the game before the play even happens. So he checks in at number 7. And just missing on the top 5, I am putting Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett might be one of the most underrated wide receivers in the game because he is sitting behind DK Metcalf, but he was kind of the main option, honestly, last year over DK in some games. And he's a great deep threat. He's a veteran. He's consistent. And he'll always give you a really, really good game. He'll put your heart and soul out into his game every single day. And that's what you want from a guy. And he's a great route runner. He's a great deep threat. And if DK is being heavily guarded, you can always trust Tyler Lockett will give you a catch. He just misses out in the top 6 because at this point, there's just all superstars. And starting up at number 5, I have Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is a really, really good wide receiver. I think he really blossomed into, honestly, maybe the Niners' number 1 wide receiver last year over Debo. I put Debo as the number 1, though, because that's what Debo is the number 1. But Ayuk had more receiving yards. He had more touchdowns. He was Brock Purdy's more favorite target, so this year he might even do better. And Ayuk's an amazing talent. I mean, over 1,000 yards last year, and it just seemed like he blossomed into a top 30 wide receiver in the game overall, and he's incredible. Ayuk checks in at number 5. And at number 4, I'm putting Chris Godwin. I wish I could put him higher, but he's not going to do as good this year because he has not Tom Brady throwing to him anymore. I do like Chris Godwin. I mean, he is a top 20 wide receiver in the game of football, and as a number 2, that's ridiculous. It's just unfortunate he's going to have a bit of a bad year, and I feel like he sometimes gets overshadowed because of Mike Evans, but this dude is consistent as can be. He can catch, and he'll get you 100 yards and 10 recs, it seems like, every single game. Next up, at number 3, I'm going to be putting T. Higgins. T. Higgins, a big body. Again, people don't think about him because Ja'Marr Chase is on the field and Tyler Boyd's in the field. But T. Higgins is still an amazing wide receiver. There's some games where he'll go off, other games where Ja'Marr go off. They complement each other really, really well. Joe Burrow likes him. A big guy, a deep threat, and has a good amount of speed. He's going to check in at number 3. At number 2, who will take it? At number 2, I'm putting Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith, I don't care about how small he is. He's a deep threat. He's got insane speed, and he seems to always be open. He seems to make always ridiculous catches, and he easily checks in at number 2. I mean, he was clutch for the Eagles in the playoffs this year and in the regular season. He received for over 1,000 yards, received for over 10 touchdowns, and he is a monster. And size don't matter, and he shows it. And at number 1, I'm putting Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle might be a top 5 wide receiver in the game, arguably. He's a top 10 wide receiver in the game without even with having the number 2, in my opinion, best wide receiver in the game next to him. And that shows that Tua can throw the ball both ways, and Jalen Waddle is still amazing. Again, really good route runner, one of the best route runners in the game. Thinks game before the play happens, and also is a speed demon. So he checks in at number 1, without a doubt, the best wide receiver number 2 in the game. And that's me ranking every single wide receiver number 2 in the NFL from worst to best. To recap the list, at number 32, we have Chris Moore. At 31, Matt Collins. At 30, John Mechie. At 29, Rondale Moore. 28, Van Jefferson. 27, Kendrick Bourne. 26, Marcus Valdes-Scantling. 25, Romeo Doubs. 24, Alec Pierce. 23, Caleb Addison. 22, Wan'Dale Robinson. 21, Don Peoples-Jones. 20, Marvin Jones. 19, D.A. Charks, 18, Allen Lazard, 17, Curtis Samuel, 16, Rashad Bateman, 15, Courtland Sutton, 14, George Pickens, 13, Brandon Cooks, 12, Michael Thomas. 11, Jacoby Myers. 10, Darnell Mooney. 9, Mike Williams. 8, Gabriel Davis. 7, Christian Kirk. 6, Tyler Lockett. 5, Brandon Ayuk. 4, Chris Godwin. 3, T. Higgins. 2, Devontae Smith. And 1, Jalen Waddle. I'd love to see our opinions on this list in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with any of my takes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!